Arthur Conan Doyle, The Return of Sherlock Holmes. The Adventure of the Empty House, Part 1. It was in the spring of 1894. All London was interested. The rich society was shocked by the murder of the Honorable Ronald Adair. The murder happened in very strange and hard-to-explain circumstances. The public already learned the main facts of the crime from the police investigation, but some details were hidden at that time. The case against the criminal was so strong that it was not necessary to show everything. Only now, after almost 10 years, I am allowed to explain the missing parts. These parts complete the whole story. The crime itself was interesting, but for me, it was nothing compared to what happened later. That later event gave me the greatest shock and surprise in my adventurous life. Even now, after a long time, I still feel excited when I think about it. I again feel that sudden, strong mix of joy, surprise, and disbelief. It completely filled my mind. Let me say to the public, who showed interest in my stories about a very remarkable man, that they should not blame me for not sharing everything. I wanted to tell them before, but I was stopped by a clear order from him. He removed this order only on the 3rd day of last month. It is easy to understand that my close friendship with Sherlock Holmes made me very interested in crime. After he disappeared, I always carefully read about new cases that became public. Sometimes I even tried to use his methods to solve them, only for my own interest. But I was not very successful. Still, no case interested me as much as the tragedy of Ronald Adair. When I read the evidence at the inquest, it ended with a decision of murder by some unknown person or persons. Then I understood more clearly than ever how much the public lost when Sherlock Holmes died. There were details in this strange case that would surely interest him. The police work would have been helped, or more likely even done earlier, by his sharp observation and quick mind. He was the best crime expert in Europe. All day while I was traveling, I kept thinking about the case, but I could not find any explanation that seemed good enough. Even if this story is already known, I will repeat the facts as the public knew them after the inquest. The Honorable Ronald Adair was the second son of the Earl of Maynooth. At that time, the Earl was the governor of one of the Australian colonies. Adair's mother had returned from Australia. She needed an operation for cataract. She lived with her son Ronald and her daughter Hilda at 427 Park Lane. The young man moved in high society. As far as people knew, he had no enemies and no special bad habits. He had been engaged to Miss Edith Woodley of Carstairs, but they ended the engagement by mutual agreement some months earlier. There was no sign that it caused any deep feelings. Apart from this, his life was simple and traditional. His habits were quiet, and his character was calm. Yet this easy and calm young aristocrat died in a very strange and unexpected way. It happened between 10 o'clock and 11:20 on the night of March 30th, 1894. Ronald Adair liked playing cards. He played often, but not for high stakes. He would not risk losing too much money. He was a member of the Baldwin, the Cavendish, and the Bagatelle card clubs. It was shown that after dinner on the day of his death, he played a game of whist at the Bagatelle Club. He had also played there in the afternoon. The people who played with him, Mr. Murray, Sir John Hardy, and Colonel Moran, said that the game was fair. The cards were dealt evenly. Adair may have lost £5, but not more. He had a large fortune, so this loss did not matter to him. He played almost every day at one club or another, but he was careful and usually won. It was also said that he had once won £420. He won this, together with Colonel Moran, in one game some weeks earlier. They won against Godfrey Milner and Lord Balmoral. This is what was known about his recent life at the inquest. On the evening of the crime, he returned from the club exactly at 10. His mother and sister were out visiting a relative. The servant said that she heard him enter the front room on the second floor. This room was usually his sitting room. She had lit a fire there. Because it was smoking, she opened the window. No sound came from the room until 11:20. That was when Lady Maynooth and her daughter returned. She wanted to say goodnight to her son. She tried to enter his room, but the door was locked from the inside. There was no answer to their calls or knocking. They got help, and the door was forced open. The poor young man was lying near the table. His head was badly damaged by a revolver bullet. But there was no weapon in the room. On the table, there were 2 banknotes of £10 each and £17.10 in silver and gold coins. The money was arranged in small piles of different amounts. There were also some numbers written on a piece of paper. Next to them were the names of some of his club friends. It seemed that before his death, he was trying to calculate his wins or losses at cards. A careful examination of the situation only made the case more difficult. First, no one could explain why the young man had locked the door from the inside. One idea was that the murderer had done this and then escaped through the window. But the drop from the window was at least 20 feet. Below it was a bed of crocuses in full bloom. Neither the flowers nor the ground showed any sign of damage. There were also no marks on the narrow strip of grass between the house and the road. So it seemed no one could climb up to the window without leaving marks. If someone had shot through the window, it would be an amazing shot. It would be very hard to cause such a deadly wound with a revolver. Also, Park Lane is a busy street. There was a cab stand less than 100 yards away. No one had heard a shot. And yet, the man was dead. The revolver bullet was found. It had spread out on impact, as soft bullets do. It caused a wound that must have killed him instantly. These were the facts of the Park Lane mystery. The case was even more confusing because there was no clear reason for the crime. As I have said, young Adair had no known enemies. Also, no one had tried to take the money or valuable things from the room. All day I thought about these facts. I tried to find a theory that could explain everything. I looked for the simplest explanation, the one with the least difficulty. My poor friend had said that this was always the best place to start. I must admit that I made little progress. In the evening, I walked across the park. Around 6 o'clock, I reached the Oxford Street end of Park Lane. A group of idle people stood on the pavement. They were all looking up at one window. This showed me the house I wanted to see. A tall, thin man with colored glasses was speaking. I strongly thought he was a detective in plain clothes. He was explaining his own theory. The others stood close and listened to him. I went as near as I could. But his ideas seemed foolish to me, so I moved away with some annoyance. As I turned, I bumped into an older man with a deformed body who was standing behind me. I knocked several books out of his hands. As I picked them up, I saw the title of one of them, The Origin of Tree Worship. I thought the man must be a poor book lover. I tried to say sorry for the accident, but it was clear that the books were very valuable to him. He made an angry sound and turned away. I saw his bent back and white side whiskers disappear into the crowd. My observations of number 427 Park Lane did not help me solve the problem. The house was separated from the street by a low wall and railing. It was not more than 5 feet high, so it was very easy for anyone to enter the garden. But the window could not be reached. There was no pipe or anything else to help even a very active man to climb up. I was more confused than before, so I returned to Kensington. I had been in my study for less than 5 minutes when the maid came in. She said that someone wanted to see me. To my surprise, it was the same strange old book collector. His sharp and wrinkled face looked out from his white hair. He was carrying at least 12 books under his right arm. "You're surprised to see me, sir," said he in a strange, rough voice. I said that I was. "Well, I've a conscience, sir. When I saw you go into this house, as I walked slowly after you, I thought I should come in and see you. I wanted to tell you that if I was a bit rude before, I did not mean any harm. And I thank you very much for picking up my books." "You make too much of a small matter," said I. "May I ask how you knew who I was?" "Well, sir, if it is not too bold, I am your neighbor. You can find my small bookshop at the corner of Church Street. I will be very glad to see you there. Perhaps you also collect books, sir. Here is British Birds and Catullus and The Holy War. Each one is a good bargain. With 5 books, you could fill that empty space on your second shelf. It looks untidy, does it not, sir?" I turned my head to look at the shelf behind me. When I turned back, Sherlock Holmes was standing there. He was smiling at me across my study table. I stood up and stared at him for several seconds in complete surprise. Then it seems that I fainted. It was the first and last time in my life. A gray mist came before my eyes. When it disappeared, I found that my collar was open. I could taste brandy on my lips. Holmes was bending over my chair with a flask in his hand. "My dear Watson," said the familiar voice, "I owe you many apologies. I did not expect that you would be so shocked." I caught his arm tightly. "Holmes," I cried, "is it really you? Can it be true that you are alive? Is it possible that you escaped from that terrible abyss?" "Wait a moment," said he. "Are you sure you are well enough to talk? My return has given you a strong shock." "I am fine, but truly, Holmes, I can hardly believe my eyes. Good heavens, to think that you, of all people, are standing in my study." Again I held his sleeve and felt his thin, strong arm under it. "Well, you are not a ghost," said I. "My dear friend, I am very happy to see you. Sit down and tell me how you survived that terrible chasm." He sat opposite me and lit a cigarette in his usual calm way. He was wearing the old coat of the bookseller, but the rest of that disguise lay on the table as a pile of white hair and old books. Holmes looked even thinner and sharper than before. There was also a pale white color on his long face. This showed me that his recent life had not been healthy. "I am glad to stretch myself, Watson," said he. "It is not easy for a tall man to make himself shorter for many hours. Now, my dear friend, about these explanations. With your help, we have a hard and dangerous night ahead of us. It may be better if I tell you everything after that work is finished." "I am very curious. I would much prefer to hear it now." "You will come with me tonight?" "When you want and where you want." "This is like the old days again. We will have time for a quick dinner before we go. Now then, about that chasm. I had no real difficulty getting out because I was never in it." "You were never in it?" "No, Watson, I was never in it. My note to you was completely true. I believed that my career was ending when I saw Professor Moriarty standing on the narrow path to safety. There was a dangerous look in his gray eyes. So I spoke with him and asked for permission to write a short note. That is the note you later received. I left it with my cigarette case and my stick. Then I walked along the path, with Moriarty following me. When I reached the end, I stopped and faced him. He did not use a weapon. Instead, he rushed at me and put his long arms around me. He knew he would die, and he only wanted to take me with him. We struggled together at the edge of the fall. But I know something about Baritsu, the Japanese system of wrestling. It has helped me before. I slipped out of his grip. He gave a terrible scream and tried to keep his balance. For a few seconds, he kicked and moved his arms wildly. But he could not stand. He fell over the edge. I looked down and saw him fall a long way. Then he hit a rock, bounced off it, and fell into the water.